Hey there, folks. So I'm here in lovely Portland, Oregon. You can hear sound of birds, trees. There's plenty of spring growth on the trees. And you can hear some diesel trucks or trains, or that sort of thing you'd expect to hear living inside of a city. So anyway, here in Portland. And people talk about Portland, Oregon being blighted. Just what does it mean to live in a blighted city? Why would they say that about Portland? What contributes to an economy that people could call a city blighted, right? Why is Portland considered blighted? So part of why it's considered blighted is because there's a lot of people who live on the street. There's something like 40,000 people who live on the street here. It's a lot. And there's also a lot of empty buildings, right? There's spaces, whether they're corporate spaces or apartment buildings, that are just sitting empty. They can't get anyone to rent inside of these buildings. And so that's part of why they say that Portland is blighted. It's because there's just not enough people renting. Why? So you got to ask, why are people not renting? Well, part of it is the cost of living, right? It costs a lot to live here. There's a lot of, regular things that you have to buy are expensive here, but also real estate is expensive here. I don't know if you can see that. It's an empty storefront. So it says it's for rent. There's another one right over here for rent that, probably in the time since these buildings were made, there may have been businesses in here, but they turn over a whole lot. So someone will come into a space like this, here in the Pearl District, and that space is expensive. It's more than most companies are going to be able to realistically afford to invest in a space. Somebody like Chase Manhattan, US Bank, they can afford the kinds of rent that are expected for this type of a location. But for the most part, the reason these buildings sit empty is because individuals and corporations have a hard time maintaining the level of income that they need to afford these spaces. And all of that's the entire reason for that is to do with greed, right? Because the very wealthy set the price. They're the ones who decide how much retail space rents for. They're the ones who decide how much an apartment building rents for. It's not the poverty-stricken people who are setting rent prices, right? It's private equity funds, these consortiums of investors. They'll look at a place like Portland and say, okay, there's money to be made in Portland, and then they'll bring their investments in hoping to turn a buck because they want to make some money off of it. And they'll invest in a space like this, and then it's just so expensive to rent a space like this that you can't get businesses in, right? And then when there's no businesses in your town, there's no reason for people to come down. There's no reason for people to walk around and try and shop and just invest and be a part of a city that's empty. So, these are expensive places, and the terms on which these loans were made to huge companies, it's based on anticipated income off of these very empty buildings. What ends up happening is the building mortgage becomes toxic because the value of the mortgage is so high, but the value of the rent is too low. So these massive buildings end up being underwater, where the investment company paid too much. They came in anticipating too great of a return and ended up losing out. So, when we talk about a blighted city, what does it mean to be in a blighted city? It's at least here in Portland, it's a situation where the city has been hollowed out by these investment companies who wanted to turn a quick buck, and now they set the value too high. And people, common people, companies can't afford to come and invest and do business in these types of situations because it's just unrealistic. And this is what led to Portland being a food pod city. We have this diverse ecosystem of food pods here in Portland because they can't afford these retail buildings. All of these retail buildings that I just walked by that are empty, those are buildings that people would love to do business in. They would love to have their restaurant inside of a brick and mortar space, but it's just not affordable. And that's why we have rank upon rank of food carts. That's why we have rank upon rank of unhoused people, is because you can't afford to live here, you can't afford to do business here. And the end result of that is a blighted city. There's just no one trying to do business here. And I put that squarely at the feet of the most wealthy Portlanders, because they're the ones who set the rent prices. They're the ones who decide how much a mortgage is going to be, how much a lease agreement is going to be. They're the ones who set the prices, so it's only affordable to a select group of people. You have to be part of a certain net worth in order to even afford to live here, and all of that's due to very wealthy people. It has nothing to do with the decisions of the poor. So anyway, just wanted to come on and put out a little bit of video about why is Portland blighted.